Our guest today is coming all the way from London. We're going to learn a lot about personal training and just enduring pain and being able to do more of the functional activities that we want. My new friend Daniel from New Zealand, moving from all different places of the world, even in getting into the dance scene and kind of just seeing what the body can really do. I think Daniel's going to be an amazing guest this morning, and hopefully we can learn more of what we can do to just make our bodies as healthy as possible and just really endure that longevity of whether it's mobility or lung capacity or whatever it is that qualifies for a long, healthy life. But Daniel's going to help us out this morning. It's going to be a fun one. Stick around. It's going to be a banger. Cheers, folks. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Talk Tanner Morning Show, where we go over tips, tricks, ideas, and exercise to help make you the absolute best person you can be, not only for yourself, of course, but for the people you love and care about most. This morning, I have my new friend Daniel coming all the way from London, coming out of the show. Everyone give Daniel a warm welcome to the show. Good morning, Daniel.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, afternoon
I guess
for
it's
me.
not morning for you, actually, but
A little bit ahead in the future.
coming from the future. I like that. This we talked about. You said you're on your last cup of coffee, and then you're cutting it
Yes.
off. It's
Yeah, absolutely.
how do you what are your thoughts on caffeine? Have you always been into it? Has it always kind of been a boost for you?
Yeah,
When did you
I,
start
I
doing
think
that?
I think I started drinking coffee when I was sort of in high school, in my last sort of years of high school, and I primarily because I really enjoyed the taste. And it yeah, definitely got me through some late nights of study. I'm all for it. I think like everything, it all in moderation, and you sort of pick and choose, and it's finding that balance and kind of knowing when to cut it off. I guess knowing when to cut it off is a big thing. But no, I'm all for it. I love a cup of coffee. I love good coffee.
Is that really common in your industry? Just people, it seems like a lot of personal trainers I meet, you guys are so physically active and moving around and long hours. Have you noticed it to be really common? I mean, some of these pre-workouts, I'm like,
Yeah,
what is going, some of these are nuts. Like how much
some of
you
those are
got going on.
wild. Some of
Yeah.
those pre-workouts are wild. I'm not a big fan of that kind of jittery, scratchy skin kind of feeling like that. That's too much for me. I feel like it is very common for trainers and for athletes to down some caffeine before a hard workout or hit the pre-workout, and then others are much more inclined to completely avoid them. So I feel like you're either in the balance kind of party or you're a completely avoidant against them. But I think if it works for you, and I'm not one to be so against anything. I'm kind of the sort of always a middle ground kind of person. So finding what works for you and in the best way, I guess.
Damn it, I hate how that's always usually the best answer is because you kind of gotta figure out what's your speed. I know some people who even they take one sip of coffee, they go to the moon. And then I
Yeah,
know some people they'll do 400 milligrams in a day and be like, I'm just hanging out. I'm like,
and
oh,
they'll be fine. Yeah, possibly. They might be in the interim, but potential further risks further down the line. But you got to weigh up those things. I definitely think there's a limit, and we need to be conscious and aware of how much we're consuming on a regular basis, and also looking at what is that cutoff point, especially if we want to improve like sleep quality and things like that. We need to be mindful of when am I cutting that caffeine off, because it is still going to stay in your system for a long time after you've finished that last cup. So it's making sure that the body processes that caffeine in enough time to then be able to put yourself into that restful state to be able to get a good night's sleep. Otherwise, you do just end up chasing your tail and trying to catch up and pick yourself back up again, and that will have detrimental long-term effects for sure. It's just when that will happen, that's debatable.
This means sleep, right? This superpower humans have. It almost, when I really think about sleep, it's kind of weird that we just go to a spot and lay down for 8 to, well, how many ever hours someone has the privilege of doing. You just kind of black out and then you get back up and then you're ready to go. Yeah. How I personally love to sleep.
Me too.
But so how is you said you like sleep? How's sleeping for you? Do you have a routine or anything special about it?
I love sleep in particular. I could just love climbing into bed at nighttime and going, this is really good. This is really good, especially after a long day. And then in the mornings, I'm like, oh, I really just want to stay here for a little bit longer. So I'm a big fan of sleep. I'm a big fan of sleep. I try and stick with as much of a routine as possible, especially during the week, the kind of Monday to Friday. So getting into bed, I'm up super early. So I'm out of bed by 5:30. Sometimes on a Wednesday, 4:30, early mornings and 4:30. So I want to make sure that I'm getting at least 7-8 hours, which means I've got to be in bed between 8:30 and 9:30 to be able to kind of get that quality sleep. Which some nights is super achievable and other nights not as achievable, but that's my frame that I work from. So I kind of work back from that in terms of like meals and when I need to be kind of winding down, to try and be as cyclical and repetitive as I can. Weekends, like I'm a little bit more lenient, and it's not uncommon for me to check my my Garmin, my watch in the morning, and I've had 10, 11 hours sleep on a weekend. So
Yeah,
which is
that's
great.
so cool.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need it to recharge the
100%.
batteries, take the time. It's like I used to have this weird mindset that rest is for the weak. You can't,
Rest when you're dead kind of scenario.
yeah. And then it's like, wow, I can't even, especially in training. And folks, Daniel's absolutely jacked, by the way. So he's moving and grooving, got a lot, just working in the gym, doing a lot of cool things. So it's like you got to be able to recover, to keep consistent.
I think a big thing with the sleep thing is brain health, which I know is bigger for sure, and I'm definitely doing learning a lot more about the impacts of the brain and neurological disorders and neurological decline. But sleep is the big one. Sleep is the big one. There was a study that I read about recently that looked at brain scans of a sleep deprived, I think she was like sort of mid 40s, but suffered chronic sleep deprivation. So they took a brain scan and looked at kind of, I'm not sure of the specifics, but they were just looking at the white matter and what was going on with their brain, and they compared it to that of a patient who had a traumatic head injury. I can't remember what it was from, but was essentially some pretty serious head trauma. And the scans were almost identical, in terms of what was going on in the brain. I think that is really scary to go, right, if I don't get enough sleep, my brain is going to shut down and is not going to operate in the best way. Similar to that, if I get in a car accident and have some trauma to my head. And unlike other muscles in your body that can slowly repair and regenerate, the brain doesn't have that same those same resources, or it doesn't regenerate in the same way that other tissue in the body does. And that's why neurological disorders and things like that's why they take over once they sort of start. So it's like, if we want to keep our brain healthy and things like that, sleep is one of the biggest things I think that you need to be prioritizing. And especially for people that might have a family history of Alzheimer's, dementia, or other neurological diseases, it's like, I've got to be aware of my future and take all the steps that I can in order to try and hopefully prevent it, but if not, slow it down and slow down those um, symptoms, or slow down that kind of process, because it is achievable. You've just got to be aware of it, I think. But yeah, sleep is huge. Sleep is huge.
I feel this. I've had this conversation a decent amount recently, as it seems that it's as you get older, it is harder to sleep. Is it are there Do you know of any ways to or advice on how we can maybe combat? It's just training hard as hell and like with weights. And then I know whenever I work out, I tend to sleep super
Yeah,
deep. Or is it not eating so much? I try not to eat a lot before bed, because when I do, I
yeah.
feel like a whale and my food's like almost like coming back up. Or what? I'm trying to think of what that can be do as you get older, and it's not as easy to just sleep like a rock all the time.
I think that's kind of a good point. Like coming back to that, the aging process, and I think a lot of people as they age don't put as much emphasis on those things because they feel like it's a natural process of aging. So they don't take as much, or aren't as aware of their kind of the diet and nutrition, or prioritizing those things because they don't see it as much of an importance, because they go, well, I'm this way because I'm getting old, or this is just what happens with old age. And I think this is a big thing that we need to try and shift away from, because improving your sleep and improving your quality of sleep, it comes down to everything. It's your diet and how your body is processing things when you are trying to sleep. So like you said before, if you're eating a really heavy meal and then trying to rest, it's like your body's trying to do too many things, and your body will prioritize and send energy of where it is most kind of needed. So generally it's going to be in the breakdown of nutrients, and trying to absorb all that to then make into energy. So that's going to be the kind of number one. So that will inhibit your ability to sleep. So it's kind of doing all the things of going, right, I need to make sure that I am eating enough, I am giving myself enough of a window before I go to bed. And then also, what is my nighttime routine? Am I sitting watching TV for hours on end and exposed to that light? Have I got lots of artificial light around me? Room temperature? What is that kind of process? And I think as we age, it's just going, I need to still be prioritizing these things in order to make sure that those latter years are still, we're still switched on, we're still able to do all those things, rather than just succumbing to old age or succumbing to age, which I think is what the majority of people do. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, this kind of this frame and this mindset of, as we age, not completely neglecting still the fundamentals and the principles that we need to learn about, incorporate, and
Yeah,
kind of like slow down. It seems, I mean, aging's inevitable, and well, maybe, who knows in the future, but just really trying to do the things that can really help with that. And it seems like sleep's a non-negotiable, or at least trying, right? And
yeah,
investigating it, being curious and open. Some people are really screwed. I got some friends who they're like, yeah, I can't sleep at all, and this and that. And
yeah.
so if you can, it's a total blessing.
And
I did
then
want
and
to.
then and then rely heavily on medication and things like that. A quote or a phrase that I really like is, aging is inevitable, but feeling old um, is optional.
Yeah,
It's no doubt we're all aging. We're all gonna get old. The alternative is not so great. But we're all gonna age. It's how we choose to feel as we age. I think that we have more power over than we think, rather than
yeah,
just succumbing to age.
so true. Well, I gotta ask. So, with I've yet to have someone on the show who's had such a cool background in the dance field, and it was a huge part of your journey. So maybe we can kind of peel back a few of the layers on there was a lot that happened with Daniel before he became a badass personal trainer, but maybe
Yeah.
we can kind of peel some of those layers back and you could really touch on kind of your story with dance and how that kind of got you moving around the world and doing all
Yeah.
this cool stuff you were telling me about earlier.
Yeah, cool. So, actually, I started dance when I was really little, when I was about 7. I must have been about 6 or 7. It was performing and just doing shows for my family and my grandparents. And then I got involved with equestrian. I rode horses for a long time, and I rode horses all through high school, both in Hong Kong and back in New Zealand. And that was a really big passion of mine. And I competed. I did some eventing and did some show jumping, which was that was kind of what I wanted to do. Um, but then when I was in my last couple of years at high school, this is going back 15 plus years now, um, I found myself more involved with performing arts and being on stage, and loved it. Just was kind of thriving. I was never a massive academic when I was at school. I was more of a creative and more involved with outdoor pursuits and physical education and things like that. So when I left high school, I applied for a dance school. This is back in New Zealand, and my audition for the school was used to be known as the National Ballet School, and then it moved into the New Zealand School of Dance. And the audition was my first ever ballet class. And I remember turning up, and everyone else had been doing ballet. The girls had been doing ballet since they could walk. So since such a really young age. And I got into that ballet class, and I was so out of my depth. And there was, I think, must have been about 3 or 4 guys in the class in the audition. And I was just following along, just trying to do my thing, doing my best that I could. And the teachers, the tutors, and the adjudicating panel could see. Um, but it was a wild experience, and we had to present a solo, which I presented, and came away from it, and I had a really good response. But I didn't get into school that year because there was the risk that I was so far behind that I would be constantly trying to catch up, and my body wasn't prepared for the rigorous training that we would be doing. So they sort of said, go away, give yourself a year, take some classes. And so I did that, and then reapplied for the school the following year, and got in. And I still kind of remember that day of the headmaster of the school, yeah, I guess you call him a headmaster, just kind of congratulating me and said, "You've done everything that we asked you to do, and it's paid off." So I got a place in for the following year, and that was some of the best 3 years. It was a phenomenal experience. Just we had classes in the morning, rehearsals, and just a full day of being athletic and moving our bodies and challenging, and it was amazing. We got to work with some incredible choreographers from the States, from New York, from the Netherlands. In that process of being at school, I also had surgery on my knee, so I had to rebound from that and come back and do a big graduation season that we would do at the end of the year. And then once I graduated from school, I went straight into performing with a company. This is still back in New Zealand, and did my first international tour within the first 3 months of leaving school, which was a 3.5 week tour of Germany. So we would travel around in a bus, perform in a show, travel to the next venue, perform, travel to the next venue, perform. And so we just kind of did that for about 3.5 weeks, which was this unreal experience. The show itself was extreme. It was extremely physically demanding, but an experience I'm so grateful for. An experience I'm so grateful for. And so, yeah, dance has taken me around the world, and I'm so grateful for those experiences. And thinking about and reflecting about it now, I do miss it somewhat. I do miss it somewhat. But that has brought me to London. came to London in 2014 and started working here as a professional. And in between kind of dance contracts, I found myself working in a gym, just to kind of in between auditions and things like that, and sort of realized, oh, well, this is something I could do as well. That was that I enjoyed. It was, again, physical, people. There was somewhat of a performance element, teaching big group classes. So that was my sort of entry into fitness.
So I have, what are some of the misconceptions about like these schools with dance school? It's from the out, like I've only seen it kind of like rough shots in movies and
Yeah,
stuff on like the
yeah,
elegance and the grace and everything's like very classy, but it's like almost drill sergeant type
yeah.
like work ethics. And I never really understood like how
It's
painful, physically demanding. Like this stuff's crazy. How people are contorting their bodies and doing all that.
Yeah, it is. If I think of like the dance films, like it's like that. It's competitive, and it is physically demanding. You've got to you've almost got to constantly earn your place or earn your right to be there. And then you have choreographers coming in that you want to work with and you want to showcase your ability and talents. But at the same time, all your best friends are around you, so it's competitive, but you're competing with yourself. It's not. It doesn't get. Well, I didn't find anyway. We had a really great class when I was working at school, so we were constantly pushing each other, supporting each other, and things like that. But it was grueling. Like we would be in the studio. Class would start at 9 a.m. and we'd have classes till 9 till 10:30, till sort of lunchtime, first thing in the morning. Two technical classes, two 90-minute technical classes in the morning, and then lunch, and then rehearsals or workshops or repertoire and things like that in the afternoon. And a lot of us would be in the gym before morning classes, and then would stay afterwards and doing Pilates or yoga practice and things like that. Um, Thinking back now, there was a lot there was a lot that I wish I knew then that I know now, that I think would be so helpful. And I do work with some dancers now, and this is
Cool.
which is super cool, because I'm like, I've got all this information that I wish I knew, and I think would have been beneficial for me then, from both a dance perspective, but also from a strength and conditioning and looking after your body kind of perspective, that I want to give, because it's like, this will make you perform longer, look after your bodies better, support your recovery in a much better fashion. Because we although it wasn't that long ago, there wasn't much emphasis on that. It was more about doing classes, constantly just working hard and constantly pushing, rather than going, how can I do this in a more sustainable, smarter way? I think is the big thing.
So that would be some of your takeaways, or
Yeah.
like as you're becoming into the mentor role and helping these other younger folks, that it would be a lot about recovery, or what else? What other advice would you give to
There'd
folks?
be a lot. So we would we were constantly trying to be better. So whether it was improve a skill, whether it was more turns, higher jumps, bigger leaps, um, and it was just constantly trying to practice those skills and improve those skills. Whereas I think now it's about kind of going, right, if I want to jump higher, what are the tools that I need to do to jump higher? I need to look at my ankles and absorbing force of how much flexion and dorsiflexion have I got in my ankles. How much tension am I creating through that kind of takeoff? So building more isolated strength, in those smaller muscle groups, and also more explosive power in the muscle groups, as opposed to just constantly refining those skills. So it's kind of pulling it apart and going, what are all the pieces of the puzzle that I need to apply, and can I go away and work on these things individually, and then they all come together to create right, boom, I'm able to jump a lot higher without necessarily having to constantly be jumping. So I think it's like a runner improving their running, not by running more.
Yeah. It's crazy how all these nooks and crannies, tendons and ligaments and stuff are
Yeah.
really the supporting structures of, and I mean, injuries is um, really your bread and butter now. And I mean, man, you can't put a price on that. Like being like hurt and just wanting to be healthy more than anything in the world. So that's where Daniel comes in. I guess my
Yeah.
question my final question on the dance thing that I wanted to ask is I've heard of, so I love playing football. I was American football,
Cool.
and I a lot of people got hurt. And I remember some of my friends, and I've heard of some pros and stuff doing like dance classes and things like that. How have you heard of other athletes from other areas coming and taking lessons from that? Or what are some of the lessons from dance? Why are people attracted to that? And why is there a crossover with that at all?
I remember some of the kind of regional rugby team would come and use the dance studios. There might have just been for yoga practice, but I remember seeing one of the New Zealand regional rugby teams going and doing like a ballet class or a sort of like a movement kind of based class. And I think it's a different way of using your brain, and it's kind of just creating different movement patterns, and I guess creating that kind of fluidity. They say that dancing is one of the best things for like movement wise for your brain, because it's spatial awareness, it's proprioception, so like balance and understanding kind of where your body is in space, and navigating to different space, I guess, and finding ways to do that keeps you balanced, keeps you centered, or takes you off balance, but then kind of pulls you back in, as opposed to very regimented. I'm going to this position, I'm going to this position, I'm going to this position, and moving in that kind of way, which a lot of, I guess, gym training is. So dance kind of creates that more sort of fluid motion, and it's just I think a very different way of connecting with your body, but also connecting with your body and brain, which I think is a really powerful notion.
Totally different ball game, just like learning something and then actually applying the spatial awareness. And these nowadays, with the amount of money dumped into sports and with the amount of pressure and all this and that, a lot of this stuff comes down like your ability to be a professional nowadays with levels of competition comes down to like
Yeah,
inches and
100%.
staying healthy and all this stuff. It's really nuts what how much is poured into it. That's cool.
It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure, isn't it? Like for top athletes to be, I think, especially when it comes to like injury, to bouncing back from injury in such a short space of time to get back on the field, like that's there's nothing healthy about that. There's nothing healthy about that. And I think the misconception is that people think that that's realistic. So when you have an elite sports person, I think an Achilles rupture is a really good
Yeah,
example of this.
yeah.
A full Achilles rupture is like, these athletes will be back on the field in a stupid, ridiculous short amount of time. And like, your body, your tendon doesn't have enough time to heal in that short space of time. So they just end up kind of, I guess, doing what they can to enable them to manage and operate. But people then see like, oh, well, so and so was able to bounce back from that injury, so can I. But that doesn't always mean it's the best way. They're getting back onto the field because it's their job, it's their livelihood, and they've got all these external pressures. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the healthiest way to return to sport or the healthiest way to get back to those activities, especially from a severe injury like that.
So Daniel, you've had quite a few injuries yourself,
Yeah.
and coming back from these has been not only your branding and how you really help people now, but how, I mean, can you kind of talk me through your mindset, what you were doing, or how does even one kind of get ready for over, because injuries are going to happen to us all in some way, shape, or form, I'd imagine. And but like, how do we handle this? How do we think about it? And what are take me through your process.
Yeah, so injuries suck. No matter what the game is, that they suck, and they are somewhat inevitable. Like if you're going to be testing and pushing your body, if you're going to be doing anything physical, you're going to experience some form of pain throughout your life. So we can't avoid that. We can't bulletproof ourselves. The best thing that we can do is prepare for when they do happen and provide ourselves or um, have the tools to be able to manage those instances when they do happen. So um, I last year, almost a year ago, coming up to a year ago, ruptured my Achilles. I was working in Italy and ruptured my Achilles, which was probably my most traumatic injury to date. It was, yeah, it was pretty traumatic, and I kind of knew straight away that's what I had done. Um, but again, I think it's about going right, accepting the reality of what has happened, of understanding the what the process and the road to recovery is, and either working with a coach or finding ways that you can continue moving and to continue training and progressing in other areas. So for example, like in Achilles, my ankle is it's one part of my body. It's an ankle. I was on crutches, I was in a boot, but I could still do seated movements. There was still a lot that I could do to work around. It wasn't completely debilitating. As frustrating it is, but you just have to be creative with these things and going, right, I still want to be able to train. I still want to keep strong because I know that's what's going to also help with my healing and improving the tissue and the healing process. How can I do that? And I've kind of throughout my training, I've always worked with a coach. So it's having that communication going, right, we're limited here, but what else can we do? What are we limited here? And that's a really positive thing to go, right, whilst I've got an ankle injury, it's not, I don't identify with being injured. I have an ankle injury. So it's the language that we use to describe our situation, I think is a really powerful tool as well. Um, and finding creative ways in which you can kind of continue moving forward. And then as you go through that journey, frustrations are going to come up. You're going to be sick and tired of being in a boot or being on crutches. And then it's kind of reminding yourself, you know what? Okay, well, look at where I was. What am I able to do now in that kind of rehab process? And then looking forward and going, you know what? This isn't going to be forever. I've got to remind myself of why I'm doing these things in order to kind of keep persevering forward. But to kind of come back to sort of what you said, I think a big thing is your mindset and the language we use to talk about how we explain what is going on, or the language we use to describe our pain and our discomfort. So a lot of people would say, like, I'm injured, I can't do that. I'm injured, I can't do that. As opposed to, and how we would reframe that to going, I have an ankle injury. I need to modify some things. This is what I'm going to be able to do, or what I have an ankle injury. What can I do instead? What can I do instead? So it's having that way of thinking and talking to yourself as much as the people around you about understanding where you are and that it's not so debilitating. Um, I think that's been a big thing for me to work through is the language side of things, for sure. And my coach has supported me through that when I'm in a having a low point of going, I'm feeling really frustrated about my progress, and going, right, let's reframe and look at what we've done, where we're going, and it does. It changes your energy, it changes your mood, and it's when you're creating those positive affirmations that your body's able to heal better. It's not just about the physio and the rehab work and the diet and the sleep, but it's the stories we tell ourselves as much as all those other things. I think is a huge part.
Yeah. Yeah. No, wise words. It's so true. And just continuing to, it seemed, yeah, your ankle's injured, but your body still needs to be moving and flowing to get blood and nutrients and everything else. And just because, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's a newer philosophy for me, and because it's, uh, I like to call it eating like shit sandwiches when we're really hard on ourselves and we're
Yeah.
kind of in this mind trap of just, it can be so brutal and
Yeah.
icky and messy and nasty, and but just trying to avoid and being, like you said, creative. And now that you're on the other side, there seems to be nothing that replaces personal experience. Like no one can tell you like you didn't go through this and you haven't overcome, and now you use it in your business. Do you so how do you kind of communicate? Is it the same message, or how do you transfer this knowledge into your business today?
I think it's such a personal and individual journey. So I think it's when a new client comes to me, or when a current client is sort of dealing with some pain or some discomfort or a setback, it's asking the right questions, and it's just having that really honest conversation of going, how are you feeling, like what, and I think as a coach, listening to the way that a client talks about themselves or about what is going on, and understanding that, and then trying to ask more questions, or trying to educate the client in order to switch that mindset. Let me kind of give an example. So I've had clients that have been super frustrated with their sort of pain and injury, and you send them a message and going, I'm okay, or I, just, and all the language is quite negative. All the language is quite negative. And so how we try and navigate through that is going, right, well, okay, well, tell me something good. Tell me what good has happened, or tell me what went well in that workout. Tell me what you thought went well in that workout. And then they start to think about those things, are going, well, actually, this felt better than what it did last week. And actually I was able to add a little bit more weight onto this movement. So it's like you start to highlight those small wins, and then going, okay, I'm going to ask that question on how did that workout go again? And I want you to use those things. And then they start to dig a little bit deeper and reflect, going, actually, yeah, okay, it did go well. Or you reframe the question and going, and how are you now? And I'm like, actually, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm not just okay. So I think it's asking the right questions and just being invested and digging a little bit deeper when it requires you to do so. And that's a big part of coaching, is as much as it is delivering the fitness and the progressions and the diet and nutrition, but the mindset game is huge, and you will only get the results that you want to achieve with the appropriate mindset, but also having the tools to be able to navigate through a mindset shift when it's needed.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
I mean, something about, I've always done more for other people than I have for myself in the past, and getting other people involved, even in my own journeys and struggles and stuff, seemed to just make it more bearable and enjoyable as you're just figuring things out. And
Yeah.
it's time. I do believe that time heals wounds, and that the consistency and support is really the, man, would you even want to do it by yourself anyway? That sounds God,
Yeah.
miserable.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you on, I think for a lot of people, including myself, it can be very intimidating to live in different parts of the world. I think between culture and language and a lot of other things, it can be it can be a struggle, or yeah, like I had mentioned, intimidating. So I'm just going to list off a couple places, and I want you to tell me your favorite part about the place and
Okay.
something that you don't like so much. We'll play a little game and we'll
Okay,
run through
cool.
them. So first, start me off with New Zealand. What is something that you love about New Zealand, and what is some things that you would like to see change?
Um, what I love is the 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 fresh air, the feel of the grass, just being out in nature there, like walking on the lawn with bare feet, the smell in the air. It just feels really good, and it's home. It's home for me. It will always be home for me. Um, the one thing I don't like is that it's so far away.
Yeah, in the middle of the ocean,
It's
man.
it's so far. It's so far away. Like I think about it every time I have to get on the plane to go home. I'm like, God, every time this is so far. This is so far.
How far
Um,
of a flight is that from London?
so I have to get 3 flights to get home to my parents' place. So I will go often. I'll go London, LA, which is about 11 hours, and then LA, Auckland, which is about 12 hours. And then I'll do a small domestic flight, which is about 2 hours. So it's well over 24 hours travel.
Dude.
Yeah,
For the fam. For the fam.
you
Okay.
got yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
that's what we gotta tell ourselves. This so Hong Kong. What'd you love about it? You said he rode horses in Hong Kong. I
Yeah.
That sounds so wild to me. But yeah, so Hong Kong, what something that you love about it, and something not so much.
Hong Kong. It's the unexpected that I like about Hong Kong. So um, you kind of go there and you have this, I guess, especially if it's your sort of first time, you have this expectation of what Hong Kong will be like. And if you are there with a local, or if you come with me and visit, like where we used to live was not central high rises and a concrete jungle. It was out in the country. So we had wild boars running around in our backyard. We had cows. There was mountains and country park and dense bush literally behind our house. And you wouldn't expect Hong Kong to be like that. Like I said, I would ride horses and we would go out to the beaches and things on the weekend, and they were beautiful. They were beautiful. So I think it's that unexpected, and Hong Kong is like a big playground. There's just so much to do, and it has this really cool energy about it that it's a little bit carefree. People still take their job seriously and go to work and obviously do all those things, but at the same time, they're not so distracted by, you know what, I'm gonna push this up, I'm gonna go and do this, or like I feel like in London sometimes people can get quite like tunnel visioned, whereas there that's kind of like the wings are off. Like, what are we gonna do? What can we do? How can we have some fun? Which I love about it. Um, what I don't like about it, uh, that's a tough one. It's definitely changing now. Hong Kong's definitely changing, which I'm not sure I'm so keen on. But that's inevitable. Change is inevitable.
Yeah.
Um, can I say that I don't visit as often, and that's what I don't like about it?
Hey, I'll take it. Don't hey,
Yeah.
it's I'm curious. I don't know how much a home would cost there, but I'd imagine it's got to be cheaper than London. But
Real estate in Hong Kong is stupid money.
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Stupid money. Yeah. Real estate is really, really high there, and often the price per square foot, because like most of the in central and kind of central London there, sorry, central Hong Kong there, small sort of shoebox style apartments and flats. But yeah, it is really high. It is really high. High
Okay.
population, small space of it. Yeah, it's
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. All right. London's up. Something that you
Yeah.
love about, you've been here for a decade now, and
Yeah.
something that you love, something not so much.
I love the opportunity and I guess, the variety of things that you can. I love London. I love the city. I love the city. You can go to the theater. You can go and walk or ride a bike in the park. There's just it's so, especially in the summertime, like it's so beautiful and it's so social. You can walk along the Thames and um, there's just this yeah, it's really social on that side of things, which I love. There's always so much going on. There's always so much going on. What I don't like is a couple of things. I guess it would be everyone's going to probably say the weather, but you don't really come to London to the UK for the weather. One would be that it's so far away from my family.
Yeah.
And okay, yeah, I'm gonna go with the weather can be pretty shit at times. As
Take
as
it.
as,
That's what
as,
I've heard. Yeah.
as
I
yeah,
don't.
as cliche as it is, but you just kind of accept it. You just kind of accept it.
Mhm. Okay. Cool. All right, folks. We're moving into the last section. We're going to do some fun coaching questions. Daniel, our man, already laid it out. We got to sometimes ask the questions to just get to know and have a deeper understanding. So we're going to go to the handy dandy chalkboard. Let me shuffle a few things up so you're able to see. And folks, of course, as always, as you're listening, watching, maybe you grabbing some coffee, maybe you're grabbing your journals or something. You want to write some of these questions down to just learn a little bit more about ourselves. So, Daniel, we got some coaching cues for you this morning. The first one I have for you is, what is one way that you can be kinder to yourself? What is one way that you can be kinder to yourself?
So practice it. Practice being kinder. So I think that's a people just almost expect to be the expectation of it. But I think practicing gratitude and taking time to reflect on some small wins or things that you are grateful for, um, even if it's just showing up. So sometimes it can be really hard to find those things, but it's going right. What are the small wins that I can take and allowing those small wins to be to eventually kind of build up to something bigger, to a bigger win.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
What is one thing you love about yourself?
My passion for my work.
Okay.
And the love and care I have for the people close to me. So my family, my friends, and my clients.
What's better than that, right? What's
I've also
one thing
got
you
pretty
want to? Sorry, go ahead.
I said I've also got pretty good legs that I'm quite proud of.
Hey, the legs. The answer is legs. What do you want
Yeah.
to celebrate at the end of this year?
My injuries, my injuries and overcoming my injuries. So being free to be not feeling limited by my injuries, I think is a big thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's your biggest challenge right now?
My biggest challenge. This was a tough one when I was thinking about it. Remaining authentic in a overcrowded, saturated fitness environment, I think is a big
Man,
thing.
dude, that is the truth. That is. We got to just bring that to life.
Yeah.
Okay. What is your number one goal?
To make my family proud.
What does that look like?
Is this personal or professional?
Either it could be either or. What's if you could only have one goal that you complete over the next couple years,
Yeah.
that you can say, wow, I'm so glad I achieved that goal. What do you think is your number one goal?
To live with no limitations.
Okay.
Yeah. Live with no limits.
What does that look like or mean?
I guess from a physical point of view, is not being limited by how my body moves, or saying yes to the things that I want to say yes to, and being able to perform those tasks. Not being limited by my own mindset, and saying I can't do that, or I don't want to do that. So I guess it's that freedom to say yes to the things, freedom to not let your mindset, I guess, take over and inhibit you or limit you in any kind of way.
That's so good. Well, folks, as always, you can come back to these questions. You can rewatch our segments on any of our socials, but this was just a little deeper dive into our man, Daniel, coming in this morning. Daniel, before we cut out of the show this morning, what is the best way for people to connect with you? Love what you're doing. I'm injured. I need some help. I need some coaching and stuff. How can people connect with you?
So the best way to reach me is through social media. So you've got my Instagram, which is Coach Daniel McCarroll. I've got it. There's another page there, which is probably a better one. And also my LinkedIn, which is Daniel McCarroll. And I also have a website, which is www.dmpt.co.uk. And that is the best way to kind of reach me on one of those three options.
Awesome. Well, Daniel, thanks so much. Stick around after the show. We'll be chatting it up a little bit, but the rest of you folks have a wonderful, wonderful day. In case you needed to hear it, I love you. You're badass. You got this. Daniel, do you have anything to say before we cut out of here?
No, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's been a great chat.
Awesome. Have a great day, folks, and we'll see you live with another episode of the Talk Trainer Morning Show, 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. Wave goodbye, everybody. We're out of here. Peace out. Have a great day, everyone.